All right, folks, we're here today to talk about the world's first image stabilized spotting scope, the Kite APC 60. All right, this is the second time I'm recording this review. After sitting down, filming an entire review, sharing data, insights, all kinds of stuff, I went to edit it, I watched it back, and I realized I missed the point. And sometimes when you're doing these reviews, you kind of can't see the forest for the trees. I get so wrapped up in the details that I have the opportunity to miss what's truly important. And here's the only question that matters in this review. Do the benefits of image stabilization that this spotting scope bring to the table outweigh the drawbacks? And there's three very serious drawbacks. And those are price, weight, and glass quality. Because there's no question that this spotting scope is more expensive, heavier, and has a lower quality of glass than other spotting scopes in the same category. So what I did was I went out and filmed a bunch of test footage with the Maven S3 67mm side by side with the Kite APC 60. And what we're gonna do now is walk through that footage, because after comparing it at length, I have some very interesting insights to share. A little bit of disclaimer about using digiscoping footage in order to compare two different optics. If you're not shooting RAW with your aperture, shutter, ISO, and white balance completely locked down, you're wasting your time. With computational photography, your smartphone is using all the computational abilities at its disposal to make each picture as good as it can. And so when it does that, you're comparing apples to oranges. What you need to do is shoot RAW, lock your phone down completely. That way the footage that you get from two different spotting scopes can be analyzed apples to apples. Now, a couple caveats before we get into this. Number one, Kite only let me borrow this spotting scope for a few weeks. So I have not had a chance to run it through an entire season. So some of the conclusions I've come to, I might change my mind if I'd had access to it for longer. And maybe there's some use cases for an image stabilized spotting scope that I didn't think of because I simply just didn't have that much time with it in the field. Also, Sig Sauer has just announced that they are also releasing an image stabilized spotting scope. I will have an opportunity to test that spotting scope, and I am not inferring that any of the conclusions that I come to here today apply to the Sig image stabilizing spotting scope. The one thing you should know, though, is that the guts of the Kite Optics image stabilizing line is the same as the guts in the Sig Sauer line. Sig did not create their image stabilizing technology, and neither did Kite. It's another third party, and both Kite and Sig license that technology from them. So while there might be differences in glass and differences in manufacturing and all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, the kind of nuts and bolts inside the Kite are going to be the same as they are inside the Sig. This is true for their binoculars. And if you go look at Kite's website, they have a line of 42mm binoculars and they have a line of 50mm binoculars. And they have almost the exact same form factor as the Sigs. Now, before we dive into the footage, a quick update about Mindful Hunter outfitting. Bear season is right around the corner. I'm going to set up camp next week. I have one last minute opening for two guys the week of June the 8th. So if you want to come to British Columbia on an any weapon spring black bear hunt with me, shoot me an email, j@mindfulhunter.com, and I will get you all the information. The outfitter went 13 for 13 in my area last year. We got a ton of bears, big bears, and probably about 40% population of color phase. So it should be a great time. So again, if you want in on that, j@mindfulhunter.com. So the first test I want to look at is a wind or vibration test, because in trying to come up with potential use cases for image stabilization, one of the ones I was thinking of is that when you have your tripod on a spotting scope, but you're in heavy wind, the vibration induced by that wind makes it very hard to have a clear sight picture. And so I thought to myself, well, if image stabilization could solve that, then that would be a strong use case for an image stabilized spotting scope. So I couldn't guarantee the perfect amount of wind. So what I did actually is I had both spotting scopes mounted on identical tripods with identical tripod heads. And then I induced the exact same amount of vibration with a series of taps to the tripod legs, and I recorded it. If we go and look at that now, the first bit of this footage, you're gonna see what they look like side by side, perfectly still. And now I start inducing the vibration. The one on the left is the Maven S3, the one on the right is the APC 60. And I'm inducing the exact same amount of vibration. So, and I looped this footage. You're gonna see it go back to stable now. And then here we go again with the vibration. So very clearly, there's more vibration in the Maven than there is in the APC 60. However, one thing to note is that there was still an unacceptable level of vibration in the APC 60 to capture fine details. So if you were at a point where you were trying to age a sheep and you had a serious amount of wind vibration, based on this test, it does not appear that the image stabilization in the AP60 is sensitive enough or intense enough to reduce that vibration to a degree where it still doesn't negatively impact your ability to see fine details. Now, the next piece of footage I want to look at is handheld at max zoom. So this is me trying to stand as still as possible, zoomed in to 35x, digiscoping, and trying to hold it. You'll see at some point here I get a little bit more stable, but there's still a lot of movement. Okay, before I get into the takeaways from this test, that was magnified to max magnification at 35x. Now let's look at minimum magnification at 17x. Okay, so here we go. Get things a little more stable, but definitely still serious amount of movement. The image stabilizing at this level of zoom in a monocular lens compared to binocular is a little bit less intense than I thought it was going to be. I don't know if you've ever tried to count rings on a sheep or age a goat or estimate the size of a mule deer at 1,500 yards, but having this much movement in your scope is gonna make it impossible. So that was kind of shocking to me. Let's go actually look at the quality of image this spotting scope is able to produce in relation to the Maven S3. So Maven S3 on the left, APC 60 on the right. You will notice immediately the Maven is much crisper. The lines on that E shape are way tighter. The detail is better. There's almost like a fuzzy haze on the APC. In addition to that, if we look at the trees in the background, way sharper image with the Maven than the APC. So listen, overall, the quality of the glass in the Maven is obviously superior to the glass in the Kite. And just for a frame of reference, the Kite retails for $2,200 and the Maven retails for $1,800. Now, the last insight I want to share is something I didn't even notice until I got back into the studio. So we're going to zoom way in here. Now, obviously the Maven is way sharper than the APC, but look at how much the APC is moving, okay? This is pretty wild. Now, both of these tripods, I filmed this footage simultaneously. They were on identical tripods, identical tripod heads. Everything was literally identical. Nothing is moving in the Kite optics. So there's one of two things is happening. Either as a result of the inferior glass, there is so much mirage occurring for the Kite that it makes the whole image appear as if it's moving. And especially when you're zoomed in, if you've ever had heavy Mirage and you've zoomed really far in on your spotting scope, then definitely you do get this like sense that the whole image is moving on you. I think the only other explanation is that something to do with the electro gimbal or the stabilization device is off, and it has this slight movement to it even when it's on a tripod. Now, one thing it did not occur to me to do is actually film the footage with the gimbal off. Like, you can turn the stabilization on or off in this thing. And what I should have done immediately after this, but again, I didn't notice this movement until I got back into the studio. What I should have done is record some back-to-back footage with the stabilization on and off and see how it looked on the tripod. But suffice it to say, there is clearly either severe mirage or some movement from the gimbal being introduced into this image. Okay, now that we've gone through the footage, let's kind of recap what we saw. The image quality of the Kite is significantly lower than that of the Maven, even though the Maven is $400 cheaper. The image seems to wobble slightly, even when it's held still. So this is either an artifact of the image stabilization or it's created because of the Mirage due to the inferior glass. Thirdly, it definitely reduced vibration, but I would say that when this is being handheld, I don't think it reduced vibration so much that you are going to be able to do really fine detailed tasks. So I think you can scan with this, but I don't think you're going to be counting tines and counting inches. It was very difficult to handhold at full zoom, worked a little better at minimum zoom, and the final use case that I can come up with is, and very few people do this, but I know when I guide in Alberta, we do a lot of glassing from the truck. So I have a window mount where I mount my spotting scope on a little ball head so I can sit in the truck where it's warm and glass out the side of the window. Now, when your truck is running, it vibrates. So when you're glassing from inside the truck, you kind of get this slight vibration in your optics. Maybe this spotting scope would be able to rule that out. That's about the only other use case I can come up with right now for an image stabilized spotting scope. All right, before I share my final conclusions and recommendations, today, Friday, May the 2nd, is the last day for the Forged in the Backcountry Swaro ATX 85mm spotting scope giveaway. So every $5 that you spend on apparel at forgedinthebackcountry.com will get you one entry to win the Swaro ATX 85. And again, that giveaway is over at 11:59 p.m. Pacific time, Friday, May 2nd. So if you're watching this video right after it's released, today is your last chance to get over there. So head on over, pick up some apparel. Full contest details are on my website. I wish everybody the best of luck. So listen, here's the deal. We've gone over the footage. We've gone over the data. At this time, I cannot honestly say that I've personally find a compelling use case for this particular optic. And maybe I'm missing something here. And if I am, please drop a note in the comments section below. But I racked my brain. I put a post up on Instagram. Like, I asked everybody, what would you use these things for? And what would they need to do to be the game changer that they can really be? And remember, we already have binoculars that go all the way up to 18x. And so that's already the low magnification on this spotting scope. So, and I would say the image stabilization of the 18x binoculars is better than the image stabilization at 17x in the spotting scope. Now, maybe that's because there's two lenses and so the gimbal has two images to work with. I don't know. But I definitely feel like those 18 power HDX Pros hold much more solid than 17x does in this spotting scope. So at this point, with the technology where it is right now, I just don't see a compelling use case, and I think you're better off with something like the Maven S3, which is cheaper, better glass, better zoom range, and for what we need out of a spotting scope as hunters, I just think it solves our problem better. All right, folks, there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the new image stabilized spotting scope from Kite. Did you find this review helpful? Do you enjoy non-sponsored, unbiased gear reviews where I don't have to care what the brands think about me? I only have to care about what you, the end user, think and the value that you're able to get out of the reviews. If you do, I would appreciate your support. And the way you can do that is go to mindful-reviews.com. Today is also the last day that you can enter to win a pair of Sig Sauer Zulu 10 15 power binoculars. So as long as you join before midnight on Friday, May the 2nd, you will be automatically entered to win. So you just go to mindful-reviews.com, pick a subscription, join up, and you are automatically entered to win. Okay, folks, any questions, concerns, insights I didn't come up with, please drop them in the comments section below. I'd love to continue on this conversation down there. And as always, thank you for tuning in.